Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Sri Radhe. So, I'm going to talk about a little something different here for a minute. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, Bhakti is not really all that simple. You come into a whole, this Bhakti, and you try to separate from the history, but it can't be separated from its history, because the history itself is considered to be divine. Right? That's the trouble with all these religions. They all have some sacred territory that they're not willing to give up. So here we have our sacred territory that we just, that is now, to what extent, right? This was my question from the beginning. To what extent do I have to be a part of that Gora Leela that we've given this such a high position to? Right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Swayam Bhagavan. He's not just anybody now. He is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the ultimate ideal of what a human being is supposed to be. Now, that is something that requires a state of consciousness that is foreign. It is a foreign state of consciousness. It is something that is not, we are accepting it on faith that it was a good thing. But if we were to encounter it, we might not think it was such a good thing at all. To see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his ecstasies, to see Nityananda Prabhu and his rabble-rousers. They got possessed with the spirit of Chaitanya, and of believing in Chaitanya. This Chaitanya had come to give the holy name. Chaitanya became something more than just a person. He became a divine person. And then it just sort of spiraled out of control. But you see, what is curious about all this is that you find yourself in a faith tradition, okay? And now there's really no faith tradition in the world that is devoid of its craziness. So and people will probably criticize me for saying that, but the critics of religion, they all say that, right? I'm just saying something that the critics of religion say. And I know that it applies to my own religion as much as to anybody, right? At any rate, the idea that Krishna comes to experience what it means to be a devotee, that Krishna is coming into the human experience. Krishna is coming himself, Swayam Bhagavan, God himself, is coming into the human experience. And he's already into the human experience. We already know this. Krishna in Vrindavan, we know that Krishna is relishing a particular aspect of the human experience. You might say he's taking the kind of the dream scenario. Krishna's got the dream scenario in heaven, right? You know, if you were to be envious of Krishna, or if you were to think of yourself as a competitor of Krishna, that I could have 16,000 princesses all to myself to enjoy. There's Krishna. How can you? 16,000 what? Infinite number. Everyone, every woman is his. Every soul, every atom of the universe is the anti-matter to his matter. Let's say, to put it in a very, very superfluously scientific sounding language, right? That somehow the totally opposite, totally different. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belongs to that realm, but comes into the human realm. That's the thing, that God enters the human realm to experience humanity, to experience what the human condition. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that same Krishna come to experience what it means to be in this particular human condition of being a devotee of Krishna. That being a devotee of Krishna is also a lila. That being a sadhaka, that being a person who dedicates his life to God, a person who gives up everything for God, a person who becomes obsessed with God, that such a person is actually doing what human beings were meant to do, that is actually the fulfilling the purpose of human life, and that society, one way or another, should support that goal. One should make a peaceful and loving society of people who simply love God, who are allowed to love God, who are allowed to take pleasure in loving God, who are allowed to become an internally friendly and loving community through their shared love of God. And if their love of God has meaning to it, if it has a philosophical basis, if it has something to teach us about the human condition, well, then that is so much more wonderful. That makes it so much more resilient and powerful. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is tasting so now we are Gaudiya Vaishnavas. The Vrindavan Vaishnavas, they can be purely 100% Radha and Krishna, and they don't have Gaura. So sometimes we wonder, what is the point of Gaura? Who is this Gaura? Why is he getting in the way? Why do I have to pay any attention to Gaura whatsoever? Right? Oh, that's a terrible kind of aparad right there, right? To even suggest such a thing. To give up Mahaprabhu as somehow or another not being a part of our experience of the absolute truth, right? This is the experience of being a devotee in this world as being an aspect of God's own play, right? Everything is Krishna's Leela. We know this, right? This is basic Vedanta 101, right? Lokavat tu lila kaivalyam. Lokavat tu lila kaivalyam. That God, like an ordinary, well, sometimes there are different kinds of examples are given. A drunken person, a child playing with toys. In such different ways, God is playing. That's the point of the universe, is to play. So what is God's game? That's the point, right? What is God's game? If God is playing with us, then he must have a game in mind. And of course, the people who are in bodily consciousness, for them there's suffering, and so they're constantly blaming God for their suffering. And, occasionally thanking God for the life itself upon which they depend to experience anything whatsoever. Without thanking God or recognizing God in the fact that they're conscious and can actually think about things and can actually wonder about things and can actually even think that God doesn't exist and other such things. And Ananda. So there, the Ananda, the real point that we've been talking about in Priti Sandarbha, getting to Ananda. So, the idea that being a sadhaka is a lila, it's God's own lila. It's God's own lila. Bhagavan himself. Internally, there's Radha and Krishna lila is going on. But at the same time, there's this other layer, this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu layer. And so there becomes a dual personality problem. So the dual personality problem, we generally solve that by thinking in the following way. That Gaura Lila, that's the Sadhaka Lila. Ihai Gauranga Pavo, Setai Radha Krishna. That Hetai Sri Gauranga Pavo, Setai Radha Krishna. So Narottam Das Thakur says it like that. That in this world, in this particular body, in the sadhaka body, we get Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Seta, meaning after death, we get Radha and Krishna. So one sees a prior and a post achievement. The external achievement is how we jump in. This is how we participate. This is how we become a part of Gaura Lila. We become a part of Gaura Lila by doing the things that Gauranga did. It's by, if you want to say, it's playing pretend. But let's play pretend. Let's play a good kind of pretend. That is a luxury that society is supposed to afford us, that civilization is supposed to afford us. Civilization is supposed to afford us the luxury, the leisure to explore ways of being, not to be compressed into the tight fit of consumerism and competition. So this is something that is obviously a complexity about our sampradaya, that we have a dual faith, that we have an external faith in Chaitanya, but we accept that that is the reality of our own individual being, our own individual path. It's giving sacred status to that individual path that we've adopted. To say that this itself is to be liberated, to be on this path, to take up the path of a Vaishnava, to take up a path of a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That itself is liberation. To see a devotee, that is actually liberation. By the magic of parampara, that's passed down, that the charisma is passed down. The flame is passed down. So our avatar generation, our connection to the avatar generation, this is our greatest treasure. So before every class, this is why I'm doing this, because I want to sing this song. So in our class every day at Jiva, where we're doing Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we sing this song. So I want to sing this song. This is the song that I can say, I call this my Ketari song. Okay. But I don't know when it started. It doesn't really have a Bhanita. But I have a feeling it's quite old. For numerous reasons. And some of these reasons, well, I've talked about them at other times, and there's a kind of a political aspect to it. But the aspect is that this is accommodating all the branches of Gaudiya Vaishnavism that would have existed at that time. And of course, there are many more. I didn't mention them all. I mentioned the important ones because, well, I just mentioned the important ones because those are still the ones that are the principal, let's say, motivating acharyas for other people in the sampradaya, and what the let's say theological status of that individual is, at least on one level, although some people may have other levels. Right, so rather than talk too much about it, the idea is this is the Panchatattva song and the Mahaprabhu Parshad song, and it's very much abbreviated, but this is what we sing before class. And then after class there's another one. So I'll do the after class one in a separate video, okay? So as I was just saying, so I was introducing this song, and the idea is that there is a prior and a post status. So in the class, let's say the objective of a class is to bring one somehow or other deeper into an awareness of Krishna Katha, of the Krishna universe, to enter into the Krishna universe, to enter into the Bhagavatam. Of course, we need a little bit of Chaitanya universe also. So if one can get a bit of Chaitanya universe, that's a jolly good idea. So that's Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I would strongly suggest, but because the part thankfully, quite thankfully, to be honest, we have a sufficiently rich base corpus of texts that we can keep our minds engaged, that we can keep our own interest up, and that we can mull over the grand questions that arise when one thinks theologically and when one has a tradition, and a multi-layered tradition. There's a multi-layered tradition. That's what it means to have a history. And if one, all right. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Jasodanandana Sochi Sutta Gaura Chandra Jai Jai Rohini Nandana Balaram Nityananda Jai Jai Mahavishnu Avatar Sri Advaita Chandra Jai Jai Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Khandavasi Narahari Murari Mukunda Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Rai Ramananda Jai Jai Uriya Gauriya Jata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Ayachana Bhaben Jata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sabai Mili Koro Daya Ami Ati Manda Jana Akul Prani Gaite Pari Nitai Gauranga Gai Janam Nitai Gauranga Gai Janam Nitai Gauranga Gai Janam Nitai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga, Nitai. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga Gaurari. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Nitai Gauranga.